This video is a fan-made, educational commentary. It is not affiliated with or endorsed by Warner Brothers, Hanna-Barbera, or any related entities. All Scooby-Doo characters, clips, and trademarks belong to their respective owners. No copyright infringement is intended. This production is created solely for educational and historical analysis purposes under fair use. The true stories behind Scooby-Doo's monsters. Alright, Scooby-Doo fans, gather round. For over 60 years, the Mystery Incorporated gang has unmasked more than 400 phantoms, ghouls, and assorted creepers. But here's a mind-blower. Out of all those villains, only a tiny handful, just 12 to be exact, were ripped straight from real-world ghost stories that people genuinely believed in. We're talking about legends that gave folks the absolute shivers, tales whispered around campfires, stories that made you check under your bed. Stick with us tonight, because we're diving deep into 5 of these truly terrifying inspirations. The ones that still make historians feel a little, well, creepy. Most of us grew up with the classic Scooby-Doo formula, right? You know the drill. The lights flicker, a glowing specter appears, there's a frantic hallway chase, a telltale zipper sound, and then, poof, some grumpy guy in cuffs muttering about meddling kids. It's a comforting rhythm, a predictable thrill. But what many fans don't realize is that those writers weren't just pulling monsters out of thin air. Oh no, they were like literary archaeologists, raiding dusty newspaper archives, poring over forgotten folklore, and digging through old library shelves to unearth the perfect monster. They were crafting villains that, even if they turned out to be just a guy in a mask, carried the echo of something genuinely unsettling. So, get ready, because below our 5 times the mask was totally fake, yet the legend it hid was terrifyingly, historically real. The Miner 49er. Let's kick things off in Season 1, where the gang stumbles upon a pickaxe-swinging ghost miner haunting an abandoned shaft. Seems like a typical Scooby villain, right? Just some old prospector trying to scare people off his claim. But Hanna-Barbera didn't invent this guy. They lifted him straight from the gritty, dangerous world of California's 1849 gold rush. Imagine a time when the promise of instant riches drew thousands, creating boom towns overnight that could just as quickly empty out after a cave-in. Life was cheap, and fortunes were fickle. Amidst this chaos, newspapers started printing chilling letters describing the Phantom of Quartz Mountain. This wasn't just any ghost. He was a bearded prospector, forever tapping his pick on support beams, a sound that would send shivers down the spines of anyone who dared to steal his claim, often followed by a terrifying collapse. It was a visceral fear, the claustrophobia of being trapped underground combined with the paranoia of betrayal and greed. And that eerie green glow the show's miner has, that's a morbidly accurate detail, too. It's borrowed from the radium-painted watch dials that real miners used to see in the pitch-black tunnels. These glowing dials were a marvel of their time, but they came with a horrifying price, giving many of those desperate prospectors radiation poisoning. So, while the cartoon's villain was just a greedy land developer trying to snatch some property, the true dread of being trapped underground with a vengeful spirit, or facing an invisible killer like radiation, was authentic 1800s nightmare fuel. It wasn't just about a ghost. It was about the very real dangers and cutthroat nature of the gold rush, where the earth itself could swallow you whole, and your fellow man might be your undoing. The Ghost of Captain Moody. Next up, we sail into Season 2 with the Ghost of Captain Moody. This episode sees Daphne whisked away on a supposedly haunted schooner, a classic setup for maritime mystery. The writers, ever the historical magpies, crib the entire look and feel of this ghostly seafarer from Captain William Moody, an 18th century Rhode Island privateer. Now, privateers were essentially state-sanctioned pirates, and Moody was a notorious one. His brigantine, a type of sailing ship, vanished without a trace in 1783, leaving behind a wake of unanswered questions and a chilling local legend. For generations, locals insisted they saw his ship, lanterns blazing, sailing through the dense fog off the coast of Rhode Island every January. Was it a trick of the light? A collective hallucination? The Navy, ever the pragmatists, blamed mass hysteria. But folklorists offer a more poetic, yet equally unsettling explanation. An unusually shallow wreck that sometimes shifts in heavy storms, reflecting the moonlight in a way that mimicked a spectral vessel. Imagine growing up on that coast, with the sea wind carrying tales of Captain Moody's phantom ship. Coastal kids were taught a terrifying superstition. If you saw Moody's vessel 3 times, you were doomed to die before the next tide turned. It was a chilling belief, a fatalistic connection to the unforgiving ocean. Scooby-Doo, in its own charming way, keeps that superstition alive, even if it's just with rubber masks and projector tricks. The fear of the sea, of lost souls, and of inevitable doom, though, that's as real as the salt in the air. The Dracula of Transylvania. Now, let's talk about A Gaggle of Galloping Ghosts, an episode that brilliantly stuffs 3 legends into one crumbling castle. While the Cape Count we see is pure Hollywood, a cartoonish take on Bela Lugosi, the episode's atmospheric, crumbling Carpathian fortress is a direct nod to Bran Castle, the Romanian tourist site famously marketed as Dracula's home. Here's where history gets truly dark. Vlad the Impaler, the real-life inspiration for the Dracula myth, really did imprison Saxon merchants there in the 1450s. His reputation for unspeakable cruelty, particularly his fondness for impalement, was legendary even in his own time. Villagers, terrified by his reign of terror, swore his shadow literally walked the ramparts after his death, a restless, vengeful spirit. The animators might have given their Dracula the classic bat cape, but look closely. The red sash he wears perfectly matches the Order of the Dragon emblem that Vlad himself proudly wore. This wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a symbol of a brutal, medieval knighthood. So, every time the gang scoffs at just another dude in a vampire suit, remember the dude they're mocking is metaphorically standing on stones that were paid for by medieval heads on spikes. The cartoon version might be a goofy villain, but the historical figure he invokes was a genuinely terrifying warlord whose legend has haunted Eastern Europe for centuries. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't supernatural at all. The Ape Man of the Himalayas. Our next adventure takes us to the snowy peaks in the Snow Ghost episode. It opens with a Tibetan porter, clearly shaken, claiming a Yeti with silver fur pitched his partner off a cliff. This isn't just a random, spooky detail. It's lifted directly from a sensation caused by Eric Shipton's 1951 Everest expedition photos. Shipton, a renowned mountaineer, captured an oversized, mysterious footprint in the snow, igniting a worldwide Yeti fever that gripped the imagination of millions. People were genuinely convinced a giant, ape-like creature roamed the Himalayas. Hanna-Barbera, shrewd as ever, swapped the famed white fur for blue in their cartoon, likely to avoid directly copying the iconic 1954 Daily Mail abominable snowman illustrations that had become so pervasive. But once again, the hoaxer inside the Yeti costume hides a far more legitimate and terrifying mountaineering reality: avalanches. These sudden, deadly walls of snow weren't just a plot device. They were, and still are, a very real threat that has swept away countless Sherpas and climbers. The very myth of the Yeti, while captivating, sometimes lured ill-prepared tourists and adventurers off safe routes, directly contributing to real-world tragedies. So, while the cartoon Yeti was just a guy in a suit trying to scare people away from something illicit, the underlying terror of the untamed mountain, the power of nature, and the dangers faced by those who dare to conquer it was absolutely genuine. The Zombie of Papamamba. Finally, we delve into Season 3 with the Voodoo Witch Doctor, an episode that introduces a Bacher who sicks zombie-like henchmen on Scooby and the gang. The writers weren't just making this up, they were clearly well-read. They had delved into Harvard ethnographer Zora Neale Hurston's groundbreaking 1938 book on Haitian Vodou, Tell My Horse. Hurston's work was revolutionary, offering a nuanced and respectful look at Vodou practices, including the concept of zombification. From her detailed accounts, the cartoon lifted the visual of a top-hat-wearing priest, or Bacher, controlling seemingly mind-numbed field workers. This wasn't just a spooky image. It resonated with very real historical anxieties. Haiti's 1915-34 U.S. occupation had already planted numerous sensational headlines about poison powders that could induce death-like trances, blurring the lines between life and death. This fear of losing one's free will, of being controlled by a powerful sorcerer, was deeply ingrained. The cartoon, while toning down the heavy politics, perfectly captured the essence of this dread. The idea of a sorcerer-capitalist combo, where spiritual power was used to exploit labor, mirrored the very real fears sugarcane laborers voiced during American business takeovers of Haitian plantations. These foreign entities often employed coercive tactics, sometimes even leveraging local beliefs to maintain control. So, when a mask slips off to reveal the plantation owner as the villain, history just shrugs. Same exploitation, different decade. The true horror wasn't a supernatural monster, but the systematic dehumanization and economic oppression faced by real people. If these true backstories have completely twisted your perception of every hallway chase you watched as a kid, then you absolutely need to tap that subscribe button and ring the bell. Because next week, we're not just revealing which Scooby villain was based on a still unsolved 1901 bank robbery, but we're also digging into the real-life historical figure who inspired the ghost of Redbeard and the chilling truth behind the Loch Ness Monster's appearance in the show. You won't want to miss it. So there you have it. Scooby-Doo might have promised us simple rubber masks and straightforward daylight logic, but beneath that innocent facade, the writers were expertly smuggling in genuine nightmares. They gave us cursed minds echoing with the greed of the gold rush, vanished captains whose legends still haunt the misty coasts, impaled princes whose brutality shaped nations, avalanche-inducing Yetis that embodied the raw power of nature, and zombie laborers that spoke to the very real horrors of exploitation. The next time you hear those iconic words, and I would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for you meddling kids, take a moment. Remember that the real monsters, the true sources of dread and fear, were out here centuries earlier, lurking in history, in folklore, and in the dark corners of human experience. No mask required. Which of these true tales spooked you hardest? And which Scooby-Doo villain do you swear still walks around after the unmasking? Drop your pick below in the comments. And as always, stay curious, because history has plenty more ghouls waiting in the shadows, just begging to be unmasked.